Hi, everyone. My name is Darian. I am one of the colleagues for the Terrestrial Ecosystem Community Practice. I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker today, Dr. Fernanda Santos. Fernanda is a staff scientist in the Environmental Sciences Division at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. She's an interdisciplinary scientist with a broad experience in soil science, biogeochemistry, and fire ecology. So Fernanda is currently leading the disturbance component for DOE's Next Generation Ecosystem Experiment Arctic project, and her research focuses on the impacts of ecosystem disturbances on below ground processes. Specifically, Santos is interested in how disturbances and their interactions affect soil carbon cycling and dynamics, and she conducts research in the laboratory and in the field to examine decomposition rates and biogeochemical transformations, mobilization, and the transport of organic matter within the soil profile. So today, her talk will be focusing on fire impacts on soil carbon dynamics in Arctic ecosystem. So let's welcome Dr. Santos. So Fernanda, please take over.
Well, thank you, Daryl, and for this nice introduction, and thank you to the ARPIC for inviting me. I'm going to share my screen right now, so bear with me. Just need a confirmation that...
We see it. Thank you.
Okay, that's awesome. Oops. Yeah, so as Daryl mentioned, I'm interested in understanding the impacts of disturbances on carbon storage and carbon dynamics in general. But with this slide, I wanted to mention that my work also explores the impacts of other types of disturbance, such as tree mortality and severity levels associated with tree mortality, with Chris Goff, the impact of thermal extremes, here in Tennessee with Natalie, Verity, and Bing Wang. And I also collaborate with others, such as Larry York, to build new capabilities. But today, I will be focused on my NG Arctic project, which focuses on the impacts of fire on soil carbon in tundra ecosystems, which is in collaboration with Amy Breen at University of Alaska, Fairbanks. With this work, I plan upon building on this research to collaborate with Daryl, who just gave a nice introduction. So basically, with this slide, I just wanted to let you know that I'm interested in fires, but my topic is really about disturbances in general. And first, foremost, I would like to give acknowledgements and thanks in advance. So this work in the Arctic has been possible thanks to the funding from DOE-BR, the technical and field support, plenty, and the native corporations and organizations that support our work. Thank you so much. So in addition to warming, the Arctic is experiencing significant changes in fire regimes. In tundra ecosystems, an increase in fire frequency and severity can change vegetation composition, decrease the thickness of the organic layer, result in increased thaw depth and losses of carbon that has been stored in permafrost for a really long time. This could create a feedback loop with fires inducing more warming and drying, leading to more fuels that are more likely to ignite, leading them to more fires. So for this study, I wanted to know how fire frequency and time since fire affects soil carbon storage in the organic layer and carbon losses as CO2 in the tundra soils. So this work was conducted in 2022 at the KFC site, which actually is not a restaurant, but it's a site that we named Cougar Fire Complex in Alaska. This is located in the Seward Peninsula in Alaska. It takes about, by car from Nome, it takes about 3-hour drive one way. So it's pretty far from Nome. But it's a very interesting site. And the interesting aspect about the site is that this is a tussock tundra ecosystem that has overlapping burn scars, as you see on the map on your left, that now varies in fire severity, time after fire, and number of times burned. Here, I used an unburned site for this study, and sites burned in 1971, 2002, 2015, and 2019. So I will go straight to the results from this. So these graphs show differences in values between unburned and burned organic layers. So unburned in green, burned layers in orange. We found that the thickness and carbon concentration of the organic layer significantly decreased with fire. Confirmed that tundra's fire consumed the organic layer. This is not super surprising, but it's pretty good to show that this is still being detected 3-4 years after the fire. Therefore, resulting more losses of organic carbon in the O horizon, which is the very thick organic layer on top of the permafrost. However, fire did not affect carbon stocks, carbon storage, but I think this was mainly due to the variation in bulk density, as you can see in the graph for bulk density. But when we broke down into sites representing year of fire and times burned, we found that the most recent fires, highlighted in yellow here, had the lowest carbon concentration and the shallowest organic layer relative to the unburned samples. We also noticed that as the ecosystem regenerates from fires, carbon values tend to be similar to those in the unburned sites, but we don't see a similar trend for thickness. Why is that? This is a question that I'm posing. We anticipate that fires would result in greater loss of CO2 from these soils. So I expected soil respiration to be greater in the most recent fires. So we went back to those sites last year, but only selected unburned and sites burned in 2015 and 2019. These sites were also burned more frequently. It's important to note that these landscapes are highly heterogeneous, so different microsites are present within each site, which I think complicates the story too. So I acknowledge that, and this can be a point of discussions in the future. At each site, we measure soil respiration, soil temperature, and thaw depth at 3 points along this one transect. And each point had a dominant vegetation type. So these measurements were done during the day. So it's important to note that it represented one single point in time. The green circles that you see represent the soil collars, as you see in the picture, which were installed in the soil so I could do soil respiration, which is basically CO2 effluxes, greenhouse gases released from soil. So you measure those greenhouse gases, but in this case it was CO2. So fire indeed increased thaw and active layer depth. And this was also consistent every meter along the transect, which is not shown here. So I just wanted to show you that for the measure in August, on your left, it was the measures that I took for this study. And the graph on your right that says October 2023 was the measurement that Amy Breen did when she went back in October to measure the active layer depth. So this is, our results are pretty much consistent. However, we did not observe significant effects of fire on soil respiration. Soil respiration rates appear to decrease in the site that was burned 3 times, but there was no statistical power in the data set to draw this conclusion. So it appears that the microsites are somewhat masking the potential relationship between fire and soil respiration, but it could also be simply a poor spatial and temporal coverage. I'm glad that I will have this year an opportunity to go back to those sites with Daryl, and I will have an opportunity to increase this coverage and hopefully the spatial coverage to double check and making sure that these results are consistent. So I'm gonna go back basically and redo with more soil colors. But the interesting thing as well was that we found that temperature measured at 5 centimeter depth was a significant covariate. And the strongest relationship between soil respiration temperature at 5 centimeter depth was for the site that burned 4 times. This could indicate that fire frequency plays an important role in how CO2 fluxes will respond to diurnal temperatures. So in summary, fire decreased the thickness, carbon concentration of the organic layer, but we did not observe a decrease in carbon storage in the organic layer with fire, and was very likely because of bulk density. Tundra organic layers and carbon are vulnerable to fires for sure, and even warming as well. And I say warming because we did a short-term experiment in the lab, and those samples, those organic layers that experience higher temperatures, released more carbon as CO2 than those that experience lower temperatures. And by lower and higher, I mean 4 degrees Celsius versus 14 degrees Celsius. And fire can increase the sensitivity of CO2 fluxes to organic layer temperature during the day. So data generated for this project can be incorporated into ecosystem models to advance our understanding of how soil carbon storage and dynamics will respond to shifts in wildfire regimes under a changing climate. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Fernanda. That was a very interesting talk. We have time for 1 to 2 quick questions. If you have questions, please raise your hand.
I see Adrian has a question.
Hey, sorry, Adrian, go for it, please.
Hi, that was great talk. It's interesting to see that at the burn sites, you had greater coupling between the soil temperatures and the respiration. And I'm wondering if that's due to greater daily soil temperature variability. What we're seeing at the Anaktuvik sites is that once you lose the top soil organic matter, the amplitude of the daily cycle of soil temperature actually becomes larger because there's less of that organic matter buffering the deal variability. So I'm wondering if you're seeing similar things and whether it can explain the correlation between respiration and soil temperature.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's something that I think about. So my hypothesis, yeah, it goes along with what you said. It's like lower thaw depth, so that organic layer that's insulating, it's not anymore protecting this the soils from experiencing this variation of temperature. So definitely, it's something that I agree with you. It could be about that. But what I would like to get is the data for temperature variations. It will be interesting to get data for the entire day and see how that temperature and the organic layer fluctuates. That would be nice to see. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, next, Jamie.
Hi, yeah, thanks for an interesting talk. I'm sorry I joined late, so I may have missed this, but I'm curious. So you indicated that with fire, you have lower carbon concentration in the organic layer. And I'm wondering if you have considered looking at respiration on a per unit of carbon basis. So you're not seeing any difference in respiration, but perhaps you have more carbon in the undisturbed soil, in the unburnt soil. You have less carbon in the burnt soil, but they're respiring the same. So with the fire disturbance, you're actually seeing maybe higher respiration per unit of carbon in the soil.
That's a very good point. I will have to go back and check, because when we did the laboratory incubation studies, I tried to make sure we did that. We normalized by the soil carbon. but I'm wondering if I did that for the field measurement. So I don't know. I'm a little afraid I did, and I and I got disappointed. But I will go back and check. Thank you
Definitely worth
so much.
looking.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's
Thanks for a nice talk.
Mhm.
Okay, with that, I will pass to Lise to introduce Tony.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks, Fernanda. Really appreciated your talk. Next up, we have Dong Chen, who is an associate research professor at the Department of Geographical Sciences at the University of Maryland. And his primary focus has been on using remote sensing, GIS, and machine learning to better understand the wildfires in Arctic and boreal ecosystems. And he's going to tell us today about a new product that he and the team at UMD have been working on. Take it away, Dong.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks IARPIC for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. My name's Dong Chen. At least I'm an associate research professor from the University of Maryland. My primary research interest is the understanding of virus impacts of wildfires in the high northern latitudes. My talk today is about a burned area product that was designed specifically for the circumpolar border forests and tundra. Before I start, I want to acknowledge my collaborators on this project, Joanne, Fernanda, Amanda, Varada, and Tatiana. All right, next slide, please. Wildfires are the dominant disturbance agent in border forests and tundra. Because of the remoteness of the Arctic region, satellite remote sensing has been the crucial tool for our understanding of the wildfire regions in the high northern latitudes, or HNL. The MODIS MC64 burned area product is one of the most commonly used burned area products. Although MC64, which is based on a global algorithm, has significantly boosted our overall understanding of northern wildfires, it has become increasingly clear that its performance in the HNL is not optimal. Here in this study, we sort of reintroduced a burned area product called the Arctic Boreal Burned Area product, or ABBA, as a burned area product designed specifically for the HNL. Next slide, please. I call this a introduction because ABBA is not new. In fact, it's based on an algorithm that was developed by my PhD advisor and longtime collaborator, Tatiana Laboda, more than 10 years ago. ABBA was materialized as a circumpolar level product first in 2017, which covered the HNL north of 60 degrees north annually. In the preliminary analysis in 2021, we found that ABBA V1 outperformed MC64. Because ABBA V1 only covers about half of the global boreal forest, we thought it was only right to create a second version, which covers the circumpolar boreal forest and tundra in their entirety. Next slide, please. So this is a study area. Now, like I mentioned, it's the circumpolar boreal forest and tundra. Since you're all quite familiar with the Arctic and why these biomes are so important, I'm gonna not spend too much time going over this. Next, please. Here I'm using a few bullet points to highlight some of the major technical components of the ABBA's algorithm. The core data input that ABBA uses to map burn area is the normalized burn ratio, or NBR, based on MODIS. NBR is known to be sensitive to burn scars because, but based on the anniversary NBR composite pairs, we calculate the difference, normalized burn ratio, or DNBR, which is able to help us identify the potentially burn scars. Considering the differences in how ecosystems respond to wildfires, we use different DNBR threshold values to classify potential burn scars in areas with different tree cover values. We then use MODIS actified data to refine the potential burn scars, which allows to max out the non-fire related DNBR hotspots, such as land clearing. We also use the MODIS water map to mask out water bodies. For the remaining potential burn scars, we use pre-fire and post-fire spring NBR composite to map out the full extent of the burn scars. This is a very important step, which separates ABBA from most other burn area products, because in the HNL, it's common for late season fires to be put out by the snow. This means for many fires, we won't be able to map out the full extent if we only use the imagery from the year of fire. ABBA instead uses imagery from the spring in the next year to map out the full extent of burn scars. Next slide, please. Here are some basic information about ABBA V2. Its temporal coverage is between 2002 and 2022. The spatial coverage of ABBA V2 is circumpolar boreal forest and tundra. The spatial resolution is 500 meters. This product has been archived by the Oak Ridge National Lab, DAC, and you can get the link using this QR code. We have a paper in the works that is based on this version of the ABBA product. Next slide, please. By plotting this cumulative burn area between 2002 and 2022, we can see that ABBA V2 looks like this in its entirety. The red areas are burn areas as mapped by ABBA. You can see a lot of actions in Siberia and Canada and Alaska to a lesser degree. Next slide, please. We then conducted a series of analysis comparing ABBA with MCD64. Here is a map showing the difference in cumulative burn areas as mapped by ABBA and MCD64. In this map, gray indicate areas that were mapped as burned by both ABBA and MCD64, whereas green and red represent areas that were mapped by ABBA only and MCD64 only, respectively. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but there are a lot of gray and green areas in this map, not a lot of red. This means that ABBA differs from MCD64 mainly in the area that were mapped by ABBA and missed by MCD64, not the other way around. Next slide, please. Let's take a closer look at some of the individual scars. In this map, gray, green, and red are the same classes as those in the previous map. The blue lines are the burn scar boundaries as delineated by the Alaskan Large Fire Database. You can see that green and gray combined matches the actual fire parameters quite nicely, indicating a better spatial representation of ABBA burn scars over MCD64 burn scar. This is why I said our methodology involving spring imagery was crucial because it allowed for this to happen. Next slide, please. While we have many examples like the graph that's shown, demonstrating ABBA's superior performance over MCD64, a robust accuracy assessment was needed to be statistically convincing. Therefore, we conducted an accuracy assessment which was based on the same set of 800 random points that we generated across the entire study domain. Here are the results in the form of confusion matrix. For those of you who are not familiar with confusion matrix, they are a commonly used method to judge the classification accuracy of a certain data set. There are three main statistics that a confusion matrix reflects. Commission error, which is the amount of pixels that a specific class erroneously includes, and omission error, which is the amount of pixels that a specific class misses, and overall accuracy, which is the total correctly mapped pixels compared with all sample points. Our results show that ABBA outperforms MCD64 in all of the three categories I just mentioned. And this is definitive evidence that ABBA is a better burn area product than MCD64 in this particularly steady domain, which is the northern boreal forest and tundra. Next slide, please. Here is a graph showing the interannual variations in burn area as mapped by MCD64 and ABBA. You can see that in almost every year, ABBA maps more burn areas than MCD64 does. In terms of cumulative burn area between 2002 and 2022, which is the figure to the right, ABBA V2 maps more than 40% burn area than MCD64, which is equivalent to a land area almost the size of Texas. Because we now know that MCD64 substantially underestimates burn areas in the HNL, and this particular burn area product has been, has been the main data input of many fire-related research and operational projects. Our results show that we may have substantially underestimated northern wildfires impacts. Next slide, please. Lastly, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the burn area trends as calculated based on ABBA V2. We used 5 degree grid cells as a spatial unit, and each of these green cells, we calculated the burn area trend between 2002 and 2022 based on sand slope. This map shows the distribution of the sand slope without accounting for the statistically significance. Green and red represent decreasing and increasing trend, respectively. Next slide, please. When you account for statistical significance of the sand slope, as you should, the previous map becomes this. What this indicates that within the 20 years that we study, most boreal and tundra regions show no statistically significant trends in burn area. And among the areas that do show trends, there are more areas showing decreasing trend than increasing. As far as scientists focusing on the HNL, we are accustomed to the idea that wildfires in the HNL have been increasing in burn area. However, if you only look at the post-2000 area, that doesn't seem to be the case. Does this mean the post-2000 area alone is not sufficient to support meaningful trend analysis? But if we were to include the pre-2000 area, we really don't have reliable wildfire history data that support that outside of North America. This goes to show, how little we really know about, northern wildfire regions as a whole, and how much work is still ahead of us. And with that, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Dong, for that talk. I think what we'll do is we'll take a few questions just for Dong, and then we'll go into kind of questions for both of our speakers. So I don't know if anyone has a specific question they wanted to ask first. You can either unmute and ask it or type it in the chat. Okay, so Lisa Saperstein asks, can VIIRS be used in ABBA in the future?
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely a yes. We will have, since mode is dying, for us to, I do plan to continue this. And for us in the future, we will adopt VIIRS as a continuation of ABBA. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, that was the other question that came up from Allison York was, do you plan to maintain this time series?
Yeah, I do. But problem is we don't have the funding right now. So this extension is already kind of like the pro bono work we've been doing. So hopefully in the future, like we can secure some money. So that would help us maintain this, regularly. Because I think there are, it's definitely useful for many purposes. So yeah, the answer is tentatively yes.
Do you see trying to get this, your algorithm maybe incorporated into the MODIS algorithm for burned area for Arctic areas as a way to kind of keep it going long term, or would it always stay separate?
We'll see. I mean, I never actually thought about that. I guess it's for, well, actually, Luis Giglio, who's the MODIS Fire, the producer of the M64 product, is actually my collaborator right now. Maybe one day we'll have this conversation.
Is he still at UMD also?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys are all there.
Yeah, well, he's practically next door. So
right.
Yeah. But he's very supportive of the stuff I do, even though this is kind of like showing the limitation of his product. But I mean, he's really nice and really, opening to all kinds of suggestions. So hopefully, yeah, maybe one day there is a chance for this product to be incorporated into the standard MODIS product. We'll see.
And I think it makes sense because this is really a regionally specific algorithm.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that it's tailored to Arctic and Boreal regions. So it's,
yes.
The MODIS product is really a standard one that's trying to hit everywhere a little bit. That's so right. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions specifically for Dong? All right, then maybe we'll get Fernanda to turn her video back on. And there was a question up for you that I saw in here. Okay, this is from Scott Davidson, who has two questions. First, did you remove vegetation from the plots, Fernanda?
No, maybe I should have said it was inter-tussocks, where I put the soil colors, if that's what they mean. So no, I did not remove. I removed the plants from the inside of the soil colors, yes. But I didn't put them on top of a tussock itself.
And then the other question was, he said he couldn't ask these because his microphone isn't working, but he said, do you expect methane? What do you expect methane to do? We find wildfire and boreal peatlands reducing methane flux.
Interesting. My first reaction would be to it's going to increase just for the fact that the thaw depth is increasing. So I would imagine it would be a lot of moisture, more water, resulting more methane fluxes. But it could go the other way too, where you also those burn plots could be more prone to drying due to the lack of the organic layer. So it could go both ways, but my initial reaction is always that I would see an increasing methane production.
Yeah, I would expect to see an increase too. Some research we did out on the YK Delta using the ABBA's airborne imagery showed that we had more methane hotspots in areas where there had been fire, or especially fire in some type of kind of water feature wetland. So I would expect to see more methane hotspots in that type of location. So I don't know. Scott, I'm sorry your mic's not working.
Yeah, it would be cool. It's a good way to bat with everyone in your lab before you go to the field.
Yeah, Scott put in the chat, he said, yeah, I agree, and tundra likely might get wetter, more methane. We find that despite water table being at the same height, the peat is hydrophobic. So, interesting.
That's very interesting. And the other thing about the plants, removing the plants is always interesting. So we did remove the plants that were inside the area of the soil colors, but they were placed in June. And I did the measurements in August. It's amazing though that the plants really come back no matter what. So I had to pick a little bit of the grass that was growing inside the colors. Yeah.
Cool. Are there other questions for either of our speakers? Yeah, Adrian.
Yeah, this is again for Fernanda because it's interesting. Do you have any plans for measuring the respiration from the tussocks themselves rather than just focusing on intertussock areas?
No, I didn't have the opportunity to explore that, but it's I remember seeing Adrian your presentation not too long ago, and I think I had that first impression too, like why am I measuring between the tussocks so what's going on there? No, so the short answer is no, but I would love to see data or maybe try something in the future.
Cool. Other questions? Well, I hope people think of some other questions, but while they do, I'll just kind of, I don't know, put a comment out there for both of you. What I liked about having both of these presentations today is we had kind of the fieldwork side, and then we had the remote sensing side, and kind of trying to think about them together. So I just wonder, it'd be really interesting to kind of see some of your plots, Fernanda, kind of superimposed with Dong with your remote sensing data sets, and see what we get there, and see, you know, how accurately it's getting all of those sites. And I guess I wanted to a little bit about the spatial variability of the work, or Dong, a little bit about your kind of spatial variability with that. And then, I don't know, Fernanda, if you had kind of a thought on some of the scaling work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When I got this results, I said, well, I should have put, it was about those represent 27 soil colors. And I said, this was too little. So another reason why I'm going back in collaboration with Daryl to those some of those sites, and I'm gonna increase the coverage and see if I get and I'll make a comparison between what I did in 2023 and 2024. I think this is in parts it's how we learn, right? I had never been to the tundra before. Permafrost was so new to me, and it's just, you gotta go there and hike and see for yourself. All that variability. I didn't even talk about, because I didn't explore the microsites that we talk so much about in the tundra. I think it deserves to be explored as well, the effects of microsites on fluxes as well. Something that I didn't explore, but I wanted to mention in my presentation that those exist and were around.
And then, Dong, I wondered if you had kind of thought about some of the spatial variability of the data set.
I think what the work that Fernanda been doing is really important. Like all of the field works, it's crucial for our overall understanding of tundra. But just as Fernanda said, it's so hard to cover, large space areas, in the tundra. I've been there several times, but it only covers like a fraction of the tundra, which is why we've been like at the working group at least, we've been compiling field data collected in the tundra over the past 50 years as kind of like a synthesis activity we've done with the Disturbance working group. And yeah, with that, we can definitely compare the field data on a bigger scale with the most based data set to come up with the better understanding of how vegetation responds to fire and how it actually leads to more fire or less fire. A lot of questions that still need to be asked in the tundra, and all of this work are very important, I think.
Thanks. Daryl, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I do have a question for Dawn. So when you did a comparison between MCD and your ABBA product, did you break them down into tundra and the boreal forest ecosystems? I was just trying to understand, thinking, the work you and Fernanda are both doing, how they improve the mapping of fire, have different or similar implication for tundra and boreal ecosystems.
Yeah, the answer is no, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's a very valid question, and I guess we could have done it. I mean, we still can do it because the accuracy, I suppose, of the product was not going to be the same within boreal and tundra. I mean, it should be like, if I have to guess, that the performance should be better in the boreal forest versus tundra, because fire in the tundra is much weaker and doesn't, there's not much stuff to burn. So I guess the mapping accuracy should be a little bit lower, but that's something interesting to explore. But the answer is no for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had a question in the chat for Fernanda, which is they wanted to know if the work is published yet.
No, who is asking?
Joshua Ratty asked that, so thought I knew the answer to that one, but
I feel the pressure. Yeah, thanks for pushing.
Well, this is really interesting. Are there other questions? Let's see. Dong, I wonder too about yours a little bit. Is there any kind of effort to, I guess this is kind of a MODIS-based product, and then you also have Landsat that goes all the way back to like 84 or so. Is there any kind of plan to somehow kind of bridge those together? And then, like, I know Tatiana has that AVHR product that she's worked on that goes back even further. So is there kind of like a expansive data set in the future that goes from, AVHR all the way up to this MODIS and into VIIRS? That would be really cool.
Well, so to integrate this, to integrate ABBA and Landsat would be kind of hard because the pre-2000 era which is the main problematic domain, temporal domain for Siberia, because there are a lot of data gaps in Siberia where you practically don't have any Landsat image before 2000. So that would be that is a major technical challenge to incorporate these two. But if we only look at the post-2000 era, then you already got a pretty good Landsat-based disturbance product at Landsat level across the domain already, like Manhattan, product from Manhattan from Maryland. They have global Landsat-based disturbance map. And North America, Canada and Alaska has really good, like one of the best wildfire histories in the entire world. So the need for incorporate Landsat with ABBA is relatively low if we only look at the North America domain. I don't know if that makes sense. So there's a technical challenge which concerns data availability in Siberia that kind of limits the further hindcast or expansion of the temporal domain of the ABBA, going back to the 2000 area. But since you mentioned AVHR, I mean, I'm working with Louis now, and he just got a funding to do from NASA to do a long-term AVHR based burn area product for the globe. So that should be promising and something that's really useful for all of us who are interested in long-term wildfire regions, not just North America, not just high northern latitude regions, but globally. That will be something promising. They just started, so we'll see how it goes.
That's cool. All right, Daryl, yeah.
I got a question for Fernanda. Sort of to connect back to the question Scott asked earlier on. Did you plan to do analysis of your carbon fluxes across different plant community types? I'm asking this question just because I was thinking so after fire, there's gonna be like a long trajectory of changes in vegetation composition and associated environmental conditions. Is there a way to facilitate upscaling of your carbon fluxes, leveraging vegetation types or any information that you can relate to vegetation?
Yes, and that's what I was trying to do for this what I call now pilot project last year. I was trying. I'm not a plants person, by the way. So, but I was trying to connect. I know NG Arctic has been huge in demonstrating the impacts of plant traits. So I was trying to build upon that and I thought, okay, in addition to fires itself and fire regimes, what if we took into account different functional types, different plant types, and pair that up with the soil respiration. But in my case, for last year, we didn't see that the vegetation, the dominant vegetation at least, made an impact, affected the soil respiration rates. But again, I don't know if it's just because it is what it is, or it's just a lack of more intensive measurements in the field and more replications. Yeah. But I do believe, yeah, I would love to explore that in the future for sure, to make those connections, right? Because then we could link, yeah, below ground processes with all the wonderful work that above ground scientists do, like you, Tony, you, Daryl. So that's my goal, let's.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, let's make sure we do it this summer.
Yeah, and I think to me it's important that I have someone who understands about plants to tell me, okay, this is the plant community, measure here. And yeah, I don't have that expertise. So I need the collaborations to do that.
Well, collaborations is what IARPIC is all about, right? Well, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. I think, Tony, I didn't know if you wanted to tell people, remind folks about that it's kind of I think it's still the comment period for the update to the Arctic Research Plan. Is it worth mentioning that again?
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, Liz, and thank you again to Dong and Fernanda for your presentations today. Like Liz said, while we've got a couple more minutes before the top of the hour, I did just want to remind everyone, or let you know if you're not already aware, that we are in the open comment period for our next biennial implementation plan. So this is a 2-year plan that is going to outline the deliverables, goals basically for each of our teams and communities of practice. So, terrestrial ecosystems will have a set of deliverables that we'll be working towards for the next year. But we are currently working through deliverables in our current implementation plan, and just, want to hear from the community on if there's any tweaks we need to make to the current deliverables, anything that's not already captured we want to add to the next plan as a priority, or maybe there's something that we're pivoting away from or we've accomplished and we can take off our list of deliverables for the next update. So I'm gonna pop a link in the chat with more information on the update as well as the form to submit input. And I'll also just pull up a slide which has a QR code where you can also access that form if that's a bit easier. So like Liz said, we are still in the comment period that does run through the end of May. So we've got just under a month and a half. And again, not a full rewrite of our plan, but we just want to look at our current 2-year plan. Just think about what are we continuing? Do we need to make any tweaks? You know, what areas can we maybe close out? Or if there's anything new that we aren't yet considering in our plan that we want to add. And that form that you can access via the QR code or at that link is publicly available and should definitely be shared around. Just want to say that everybody's feedback is considered. If you've got any thoughts on any part of the plan, you don't have to do an exhaustive line by line, but if there's anywhere that you've got any feedback or input or thoughts on what we should focus on, maybe even how the deliverables are written, we would love to hear from you. So definitely take a look at any thoughts that you have. Feel free to share around with any colleagues or anybody in your networks or circles that also works in the Arctic research space. And Liz, Meredith, let me know.
Yeah, I would just second what Tony said. It can be really important. I know maybe some of the structure of IARPIC isn't always immediately apparent to people who join this call, but there are specific deliverables that we are meeting by having these meetings, and we're looking at developing a workshop over time. And those efforts actually meet specific deliverables in the terrestrial ecosystem sphere. And so if you have comments or you have something you think is important or something that's on the list right now that you don't think should needs additional effort to understand, please put it in there. Every comment is looked at the federal agency level and addressed. And so it's a great opportunity for the input of different scientists to be heard. All right. Well, we still have a little bit of time left. I wonder if there are any updates from the community, if anybody had anything that they, an upcoming meeting or something you wanted to let everyone else on the community of practice know about. We could just kind of have a little bit of open time for a few minutes. All right, well, I'll see the discussion and just mention that NASA has their Above Science Team meeting coming up in May, and that's an open meeting, so folks can feel free to attend in person or virtually even, really. I'll put the link in the chat so you have it. Our registration is happening right now, so people are always welcome. Yeah, Fernanda? Oh, you're on mute still.
Thank you. I was too busy trying to lower my hand. I don't know how many people, here are interested in soils specifically, but I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm going to be leading a session at the Soils Science Society of America in St. Louis, Texas, and in the fall. And the topic will be the impact of disturbances on soil biogeochemistry. So it'll be great if you could attend. And I just wanted to let you know, since the topic is disturbance, this is an opportunity for us to meet and engage in discussions. Thank you.
Cool. You want to stick that in the chat or?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing anything else. I want to say, and I saw this, Allison. I can't believe this. Allison has been our collaborator for so many years now, and I saw this position come up, and I realized it was your position, right?
Yeah, it is. It's I'm not pulling away fully. I'm gonna stay I'm gonna stay involved. But it's time for somebody else to be the day-to-day coordinator.
Well,
yeah. So that position is available. It's a great job. It's the best job I've ever had. So if folks are interested in actually applying science to management problems, it's a great position.
Well, I've always really appreciated the work that you and Randy have both done at the Alaska Fire Science Consortium. And we did put your announcement up on our website in the jobs section. So we're trying to announce it for you too.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All credit goes
right.
to the Joint Fire Science Program for structuring the system the way they did.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we don't have another meeting planned right now. Things get busy with the field season. So we'll send an email out when we have our next meeting planned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See
Thank
you
you for
later.
inviting me again.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you,
Thank
Dong
you.
and Fernanda,
Bye.
so much for coming and talking.
Thanks. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.